Welcome to Happy Times and Places, whether that be a holiday destination or a muddy quarry, or perhaps both at exactly the same time. But look, it's a podcast in which I, Toby Haydock, watch a Doctor Who story and try to guess what my special guest's favourite thing about their chosen episode might be.
Hi Toby, my name is Simon Curtis. Doctor Who made me want to work in TV, and I do. As I record this, I'm producing on Doctors, and the story I have for you to watch is from Season 8 and is Colony in Space.
I was going to try to be artful about this. Hello everybody, welcome to this commentary for Colony in Space episode 3, which for me has a slight sense of deja vu about it. I had recorded, I'd been so good. I was about to go on holiday last week, so I got my affairs in order and pretty much everything was ready to go. And what I'd done when I was recording episode 3 of Colony in Space was I actually stopped in the middle because something happened. I can't remember what now. And then I started again, so I saved my introduction and the first 8 minutes of the episode, paused, saved it, of course you do, back up, then came back, carried on, and just as I was putting the finishing touches to it and trying to move it across my desktop and all of that, that wheel of death suddenly started spinning, and then it stopped. So I thought, I'll carry on moving it. What I should have done then was saved, but I didn't. And so anyway, the wheel of death kept on spinning, which meant I had to shut down Audacity. But I was so quick that I got it back and I called it up, and I managed to highlight the stuff I'd done after that 8th minute and save the second section. So the later bit, the bit that could potentially have been lost when I had to shut down Audacity, so that I could save it all and have it ready to go. So when I was on holiday, I could just post. And I did. I saved that second section. Wasn't that clever of me? But for some reason, the first bit that I had backed up and saved had saved as a blank line. And I've got no idea why, because nothing had gone wrong then. And I looked on Time Machine, I tried to get this. Anyway, it's gone, lost, like the UK proper videotape recordings of this episode. But I actually couldn't even save this on NSTC 525 lines or whatever. So I couldn't even rescue it in a compromised state. So what I was going to do then was I was going to record this beginning bit again and stitch it together, but I don't know. I think that for the sake of a sort of half an hour's worth of podcast, I've decided to just go from the beginning again, which is a shame because I seem to recall it was quite fun. And also, really annoyingly, it was finished. It was ready to go, that I could have just gone on my holiday because, and I don't want you to think I was going anywhere fancy. I've been now. I'm back. First thing I've done back from the holiday is have to do this again. I essentially went to Uxarius. I went to Anglesey and I enjoyed the Welsh coast. I do like it there, walking the dog, but I don't go to places with sun and cocktails, and I appreciate foreign culture, I really do, and I think it behoves us to travel the world and experience different cuisine and meet different people. But I quite like going places where there isn't anybody and I can just walk in the rain on the beach with my dog. And I did a lot of that. I took 8 books to read one of them. Kerry Elwes' account of making The Princess Bride, one of my favourite films, if anyone's interested. My sister got it for me for Christmas. I've discovered that's actually now a 10-year-old book, but I didn't realise at the time. I didn't know he'd written a book. But anyway, that was lovely. I meant to read more, need to catch up on reading. So anyway, I decided to go somewhere wet and muddy and not too far away. You see, that's what it's the travel that looms. So I sort of appreciate the Pertwee Doctor. I quite like, I'd love to have the excuse of just being say, well, I've been exiled here. I can't go anywhere. And again, not that I don't appreciate different experiences and culture. I just don't want to do it anymore because I just don't. Anyway, I like being in my cupboard talking about Doctor Who, which is what I'm going to do now. Did you need that? Why didn't I just do? I could have just done it again, couldn't I? I could have just said, here's episode 3 of Colony in Space. But I like to show my working. It's it's vain, actually, and it's needy to sort of go, I don't want you to just think I've made a nice podcast for you to listen to. I want you to know that I've toiled. I blame my parents for not giving me the approval that I needed, that I now go and seek from strangers, but also through hard work and toil. I don't get it just by making you something nice. You need to know, it's my mum, you see, she never cooked you food. She slaved over a hot stove. She needed to know that you'd suffered so that you'd be sufficiently grateful. So that's terrible, isn't it? What I've done there with my introduction is go, you should be, it's not just, hello, I hope you like my podcast, it's you should be bloody grateful for this. That's a terrible attitude to have. I'm so sorry. Anyway, let's get on and see what happens when we go on holiday. Essentially do what I've just done. Go on holiday to somewhere that's wet and slightly mucky and cold, but bracing. I mean, goodness me, I bet they had a bracing time of it when they were trying to establish their colony on the planet Uxarius. Let us see. And because of the delay, I think we've got a few extra comments, but I've read all these once before, but as I say, lost. So let's try again and see what our listeners who have availed themselves of being members of the Patreon page, which you can do for as little as £3 a month, and one of the bonuses is that you get to comment on the episodes and I read them out, and you get to be part of a lovely back and forth and chitter-chatter. So Sabrina Tirabassi, who is from one of my old holiday destinations. I used to go to Italy with my now ex-wife because she was half Italian, and that was lovely. I loved going to Italy. I adore Italian food. I adore the sunshine, Sabrina. But I've forsaken you. Catherine, Shirley and I have been to Italy as well. But no, we forsook you for the Welsh coast, less than 2 hours away from here. But Sabrina, greetings to you over there in sunny, gorgeous Italy with beautiful food at your fingertips. Sabrina says, funny that I have been doing some colony in space watching myself for the last few weeks. I guess I'll have to listen to your take on it too. Well, I guess you will, Sabrina, and no doubt you will be eating well and enjoying the sun while you're doing it. Nick Jocelyn Mellish says, I think you've nailed the ambience of Colony in Space perfectly there. Oh, thanks, Nick. It really is the Sunday afternoon of stories. This means that Nick listens to the post-credits bit. That is dedication, Nick, and I'm grateful. Not sure what others would come close. It does make me wonder, though, what the most Wednesday of stories is. The Lazarus experiment, perhaps? Or is that more of a Thursday affair? This is going to keep me pondering for some time. Well, of course, I always forget that a lot of the Davison era and the McCoy era were midweekers. I still think of Doctor Who as being Saturday, even though probably in my lifetime, up until the new series, Doctor Who was more often not on a Saturday, but because it was my default. It's that Saturdayness of Doctor Who. The most Wednesday story. What is the most Wednesday story? I would say, is Planet of Fire quite Wednesday? Planet of Fire is I think, possibly the beigest Doctor Who story, even though it's sun-drenched. So you can be beige even when you're sun-drenched. Maybe how's the beige over there in how done are things over there in Italy, Sabrina? John Hall says, I think the brain of Morbius is the most Wednesday of stories, in the Wednesday Addams sense at any rate. Oh, very good, John. Yes, because of course, and there is a series now, isn't there, about Wednesday Addams called Wednesday. Jason Thompson says, good call to give the cast some recognition. Well, I know I did. No, I didn't. Well, I talked about them. That's all I talked about with episode 2. And yet I still didn't manage to choose them as my favourite thing and showed how poor I am at playing this game. Jason says, they're all great. Maurice Perry is one of the best villains in Doctor Who, and I'm sure would be far more widely celebrated has this story been better regarded generally. Yeah, I think that's probably true. And also because of, I think, how things develop with Captain Dent, but I don't want to give too many things away, but we'll get to that. The fake lizard claws on the robot are bloody ridiculous, though. I said robot like Terence Dix then. I didn't mean to. I always say robot, but Terence Dix goes robot and Cyberman. Does he go Cyberman? Somebody goes Cyberman. But yes, robot. It's robot. I rather like this. I think there's an incongruity about the claws on the robot that I rather like. This story surely suffers the single worst case of small planet syndrome in Doctor Who. A few dozen colonists stand smack on top of the remnants of an ancient alien weapon by pure luck, and a mining team arrive in exactly the same spot and fight over who gets to stay or go, all in the space of a few square miles. And not one person at any point says, hang on, there's a whole bloody planet to play around with, so there surely is some room for miners and colonists. Yes, I was going to say that in episode 2, but I got distracted giving you CVs of actors. But yes, it very much is, we've got the mining rights to this planet, we've got the colony rights to this planet. It's massive! You don't all have to be in the same place. It's like landing in England and saying, yeah, I've got the mining rights to this planet, which includes Australia. I mean, people would go, I don't think you could spread that wide. That is very true. It is very TV. A small planet syndrome is a great Doctor Who thing, isn't it? Where, yes, the 10 people in the room represent the whole planet. Shane Plays adds, I mean, if we can't have a quarry or a bunch of corridors to run around in, the least they can do is give us a small planet. Yes, indeed. Susie Ferguson. Hi, Susie. Susie says, great episode, and please do not watch what you're saying on my account. We're talking about a story that's been around for over 50 years, so I can hardly complain about spoilers. I know, but I like the idea of you coming in and having it fresh. Susie. John Hall adds, for what it's worth, I know how the final episode of Blake 7 ended long before I got to see an entire run of show in the late 1980s. I know, but Maximum Power, which is a very good Blake 7 podcast, one of the participants actually didn't know how the series ended. And I loved listening along and was so glad that they didn't get spoiled. I don't like things being spoiled if they don't need to be. You know, I actually I was talking about this on stage last night about how I got annoyed when Paul Merton in one of his comedy things on the TV revealed who'd done it in the Mousetrap. And one of the great theatrical traditions is to say, you don't say who did it in the Mousetrap. And I remember watching this complaints programme and thinking, I'm so glad I missed that show, because that's really mean-spirited and I wouldn't have found that funny. And indeed, I'd have found out who'd done it in the Mousetrap, and I don't want to. And then in the complaints programme, they showed the clip, just in case you'd missed the offending moment and were breathing a sigh of relief. I find that sad. I think you should allow for there to be poetry in the world. Otherwise, you may as well not watch Colony in Space, may you? You may as well just say, Grok, what happens in Colony in Space? Susie says, another one, Blake 7. I haven't got round to yet, but yes, I know the ending of that too. Oh, Susie. I was there when it unfolded live in front of our eyes, and what a time to be alive. And so, I want other people to experience what I experienced when they did not know it. David Matthewman says, with respect to the Doctor getting into the driving seat, it does look odd, but there's an in-story explanation. The next scene makes it apparent that he's asked to go and check on the TARDIS, and presumably Caldwell thought it was simpler for him to just drive there. Treating the Doctor more obviously as a prisoner here would be showing IMC's hand too early. Yes, Caldwell makes it clear that he's not going to take no for an answer about taking the Doctor back to the ship, but he's friendlier about it than the colonists are when they first encounter the Doctor and Jo. That's very true. I changed my mind on this. I've changed my mind back and forth about the TARDIS. I mean, as I say, I'm not really that bothered. I quite like having a different opinion every 5 minutes. Oh, this common body like a vagabond flag. Anyway, let's go. So, Antony and Cleopatra basically saying that the public are easily swayed. I think you're quite right, because, of course, I was saying, why didn't he handcuff him? Well, because IMC are trying to appear like the good guys at this point, and indeed, Caldwell is comparatively benign. So the handcuff point I made last week was actually just wrong. And, I think you can rationalise it in story. And Bernard Kay, who objected to Pertwee's behaviour, Bernard was quite caustic, and if he could take a dim view of what somebody was doing, he would. So I think he might have been just reacting to the fact that he found Pertwee a little bit sure of himself, that he decided to, interpret any action as a negative. But that says something about Bernard's character as well. Frank Shale says, yes, the solo moustache comedian. Was Mike Wozniak the trendsetter? I was talking about solo moustaches and how they're coming back into fashion. But Wozniak, I think, has a proper moustache. If you don't know Mike Wozniak, he's a wonderful comic. I gigged with him only less than a month ago, and he's got this gift of making the ordinary hilarious and making and writing the conversational so it's pin sharp and perfectly structured to make everyday speech seem like uncontrived comedic genius. Absolutely brilliant. He told this whole shaggy dog story about a bench burning down in his hometown and his investigation of who did it. But it was all done as a kind of one-on-one conversation. He was chatting to the audience like he was just sort of filling them in. And it went backwards and forwards and had segues and I mean more segues than a Happy Times and Places. But of course they were all. It sounded so conversational, and yet they must have all been written in order to hit the comedic mark so well. Absolute genius. What a privilege to watch. But Mike, I would say, has a much stronger sort of Toast of London, Dickie Davis type of moustache than the current rather sort of wispy, mimsy one that people who are prone to do their top buttons up and not wear a tie have. And it's not a combination I'm wild about. But let's not get into that because it's pure prejudice, because I'm sure there are some lovely people that do both of those things. Anyway, Philip Marsh says, re the weight of the TARDIS. You see, this is where I'm changing my mind all over the shop. I've always assumed that the TARDIS weighs the same as a police box, as the interior of the TARDIS is in a different dimension to the exterior. Yes, I think that's a fair point. Yes, I have too much time on my hands, says Philip. And Jason Thompson, who knows his stuff and always has clarification on hand, says the inside-outside connection of the TARDIS might be one of the biggest and longest-running inconsistencies in the show. Just how connected are the interior and exterior dimensions? The interior rocks and tilts when the TARDIS is picked up or falls over. The Rescue, The Romans, literal cliffhanger. Full Circle, The Day of the Doctor, to name just a few. But doesn't spin when we see the police box spinning through space. Frontier in Space, Pyramids of Mars, Full Circle, again, The Keeper of Traken, and so on. The interior tilts with the exterior in the Ice Warriors and Castrovalva, but then Time Flight has a switch to reorient the interior while the exterior is on its side, and we're not supposed to think about exactly how everyone navigates that change from walking out of an upright door to climbing out of the top of a box. And to the point of this discussion, it can be manhandled by a few humanoids and carried on a forklift for loading into Concorde, but in Full Circle, Romana says it weighs 5 times 10 to the 6 kilos in Alzarian gravity. That's about 2 fully fueled Saturn V rockets, and yet it had just been moved by a few marshmen. And just to nitpick, says Jason, kilos are a unit of mass and are independent of gravity. The bulk of visual evidence for the TARDIS having any kind of mass and weight supports the notion that the police box exterior can only have a mass similar to an actual police box, because we see it land on structures that would be unable to support it otherwise, such as the deck of the Mary Celeste or Ruby's upstairs flat, even before we get into questions about the ability of anyone to pick it up and move it. That's very true. That I hadn't thought of that. That yes, if it lands on something not too robust and it weighs massive space tons, it would just crash through the floor. As I say, I don't worry about it, and I don't mind these things being changed from story to story. And I do like looking at a TARDIS on a truck or something. But I also like it suddenly being, oh my God, this is more than just a police box. So whatever you want to do, writer, I say. David Gillespie Pratt says, what sort of person would have a list of all the techniques used to show the TARDIS landing or taking off? And who wants a copy? Haha, of course you have, David. Brilliant. And Jason Thompson comes back in. What sort of person would want someone to send them a copy of such a list? Raise his hand eagerly. And John Hall joins in and wants one too. So I'm sure they've been exchanging lists, which is delightful. I'm glad that this Trivia Fest has facilitated that contact. Trevor Smith says, I bloody love Colony in Space. I was just 10 years old when this was broadcast, and Pertwee was and remains my Doctor. Seeing the TARDIS land on another, very muddy planet, and a planet with proper aliens and proper weird aliens, plus monsters, possibly, and then the Master turns up. It was everything I wanted Doctor Who to be. This, alongside the brilliant Third Doctor comic strips in TV action, cemented the Doctor in my young brain. See, for everyone, there's a story that's a point of contact or an era that it can just do no wrong. And, you know, when you sell it like that, Trevor, yeah, Colony in Space is not the muddy clay fest of repute. It's a smorgasbord of attractive, exciting qualities to lure a 10-year-old to the TV screen, and it's good to hear it. John Hall says it's rather a shame that Michael E. Bryant was overruled in his casting of Susan Jameson as Morgan. This might have given Colony in Space the additional twist it needed to be better remembered, and I'm sure the future Mrs. Wibbsey would have done a tremendous job. Yes, because Susan Jameson did finally make it into the Doctor Who universe in the Paul Mars audios. But never on screen, actually. And it is rather a shame. I think, no offence to Tony Cornter, who is brilliant, but it just might have given a slightly different energy to the macho man fest that is the sort of testosterone flavoured bickering that occurs in I Am Seville. Michael Herbert says, when I was researching my biography of Malcolm Hulke, because Michael is the biographer of Malcolm Hulke, he helped us with the Malcolm Hulke documentary we made for season 7. Things are not, or he's not actually far from me either, Michael, and he does stuff at the there's a museum of sort of working class heritage and stuff in Manchester, and Michael's done some stuff there. But anyway, when I was researching my biography for Malcolm Hulke, says Michael, things are not always what they seem. Michael Bryant told me that Mac put a lot of work into the serial, doing extensive rewrites and broadening it out. I considered myself very lucky to have such good material to direct. Sadly, I hardly knew Mac. This is quoting from Michael now. Thanks, Michael Bryant, via Michael Herbert. Other than to shake hands with him when introduced to him by Barry, and be aware that during some studio recordings he would be sitting in the back of the control room or gallery. At that time, the BBC kept writers and directors apart, and all communications had to go via the script editor or producer. There was always a temptation to slightly rewrite dialogue in the rehearsal room, and those changes were telephoned into the script editor by the AFM at the end of play for each day for approval, or not. So because of the system, I had no interaction with Mac, other than knowing he was very well liked and a respected scriptwriter, and from what I could see, an extremely nice person. Ah, that's a real treat. Thanks for that insight from one Michael Bryant via another Michael Herbert. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, both Michaels. Lisa Gledhill says, unlike Toby, I am not a lover of TV shows based around a bunch of men shouting at each other and acting tough. And Lisa, that is absolutely fair enough. One just cannot help one's tastes. It's a genre which was beautifully satirised by Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie in a bit of Fry and Laurie, with their series of "Damn it, John" sketches. That's very true. They are very, very funny. These consisted of two suit-wearing blokes shouting a lot and delivering immortal lines like, "Damn it, John, we're going to make this place the best damn leisure centre in Utoxeter." That's brought back so many happy memories. And it is, and there is a lot of, it's the power game through and through, isn't it? And the plane makers drinking whiskey, smoking fags and saying, "For God's sake, I'm having an affair with your wife and the engines aren't running," or something like that. Ha ha ha. Yeah, but that's kind of why I like them, Lisa. But I appreciate your alternate point of view. Legnog says, hello, Legnog. I first saw this, I think you mean story, not sorry. I first saw this, sorry, when the BBC repeated it 4 episodes a week in 2004. For some forgotten reason, I missed the broadcast and watched it on tape about a week later. The one bit I did catch live was the last few seconds of episode 3, completely out of context. Such an effective hook. I really wanted to know what Joe was looking at and what would happen next. I couldn't actually remember what did happen next, but I definitely remember that hook. Oh, well, that's the cliffhanger we have coming up at the end of this episode. Legnog also adds, an extra bit is in the black and white. Oh, the extra bit, we're talking about the bit that was missed now. That isn't in episode 2 and that was discovered when the Blu-ray was being put together. The extra bit is in the black and white telerecording of episode 2, so got sent to the countries that bought it in black and white in the 70s, Australia, New Zealand and 4 others. That's right. Thank you, Legnog. Like several other 70s episodes, they sent an early edit by mistake. This early edit didn't survive in colour, so didn't get the honour some others did of being randomly broadcast in the 80s to 2000s. That's right. So yes, the black and white recording had a little bit of extra stuff in it, which just goes to show it's worth looking at every copy. Nev Fountain says, Nev Fountain, illustrious comedy writer, dead ringer, and other half of Nicola Bryant. Nev is very welcome in these parts. What have you got to say, Nev? I'm sure we can think of an in-story reason why both the Masters and the Doctors TARDI. I would argue, Nev, because it is an acronym, it will be TARDISes. It's not TARDI. But anyway, that's just me being pernickety with you because you've got a better career than I have. Both the Doctors and Masters TARDISes do the instant materialization thing. Perhaps it's the rarefied atmosphere of Exarius, or even the doomsday machine itself, causing the time machines to act all hyper. But whatever the reason, I'm just glad the Blu-ray people didn't see fit to fix it. I still haven't forgiven them for fixing, in inverted commas, the TARDIS materialization effect in Spearhead from Space, which I thought fitted the occasion perfectly, as if the TARDIS was hurled to Earth by angry gods, which to all intents and purposes it was. Replacing it with the standard materialization was just wanton vandalism. Not that I take these things too seriously, of course. Well, Nev, and I've always vowed I won't ever lie on these or soft soap, and I hope I've got a good enough relationship with everybody to know that I'd never criticise for the sake of criticising or undermine the hard work being done. But I'm in your camp for that as well. But that's, for me, I take these things very seriously too. But also, I kind of know what I like and I like what I know. So if I'm used to something being a certain way, I think it should kind of stay that way. And now, obviously, we're celebrating the fact they didn't do something they didn't do. So that's a bit unfair of us in the sense that, well, they probably never considered it. It was a decision for this story, and we can find an in-story reason for doing it. But that's right. But talking about Spearhead from Space, that is a different case, and I would stand with you on that. But I wouldn't be rude about the people that did it on a forum, as some people are. And I think, of course, that's why I sometimes get defensive of my friends and colleagues who work on the range, because people can sometimes be, unkind and unpleasant. But Nev is not being that. He's just saying, replacing that materialization was wrong. Well, he says wanton vandalism, but he hasn't called them horrible names for doing it. And I have sympathy for that, and I would probably come down on the don't interfere. Who says, don't interfere with me? Don't interfere. What? Simon McCorkindale in Quatermass 4. Anyway, that's a whole... I just had somebody in my head going, don't interfere with me. And that could have been any number of childhood memories. But let's not go into that. Nev Fountain comes back and says, talking about Colony in Space and its repertoire of fine recurring actors set me thinking, does this story hold the record for greatest number of actors who have appeared previously in Doctor Who or will appear in the future, excluding the regular cast and the Master? I count 9, though another Michael E. Bryant production comes close, Revenge of the Cybermen. That's got Tobias Vaughan, Mordrin, Mailer, Safran, Commander Radner, the Carcass, Davros and telegraphist Bowman. It also has a guard from the Time Monster, Melville Jones, who's the other speaking Cyberman, is a guard in the Time Monster. Which is 8, so 9, unless there's a Pat Gorman hiding inside a cyber suit. Yeah, but I would only ever, for these sorts of records, go for credited actors. So if Gorman is credited, he counts as cast. If he's not, he counts as an extra, and that way madness lies. I think you go for credited cast, unless you're being... otherwise it gets tedious. In fact, the only actor who didn't appear elsewhere in Doctor Who was our main villain, Mr. Kelman. That is correct in Revenge of the Cybermen. Any thoughts on a definitive answer? Off the top of my head, simply because of law of average, because of the number of episodes and so number of cast. Dalek Master Plan, let's have a think, has Brian Cant, who's obviously in The Dominators. It has Geoffrey Cheshire, who's in The Time Meddler. It has Kevin Stoney. It has Jean Marsh. It has Nicholas Courtney. Stoney and Courtney I would count definitely as guest actors in that. I'll maybe take Jean Marsh out of the equation, even though I would consider Sarah a dodgy count for companion. But let's say guest actors only. It also has Derek Ware, Walter Randall, so I'm on 6 even without Jean Marsh. It has Roy Evans. It has Terence Woodfield, so I'm up to 8. It has let's not count the Dalek actors either, because I think that gets a little bit. We have counted the Cybermen actors, but the Dalek actors were the same throughout the 60s. If you count the Dalek actors, that's definitely yes. But again, it doesn't get to the nub of what's fun about these sometimes. It's got John Harrington from this, so we're up to 9 there, and I haven't even got to the Christmas episode, which has got Clifford Earle, which has got Norman Mitchell. So Master Plan is high. War Games is also high because you've got Terence Baylor, Philip Maddock, Edward Brayshaw, James Bree, Graham Weston, Tony McEwen, Richard Steele. I'm on 7 off the top of my head. David Saville. So we're up to 8 already there, and I haven't even got to John Atterbury. You've got Clyde Pollitt, Bernard Horsfall, so up to 11. So I mean, War Games and Master Plan simply by number of actors. But yeah, if I had a proper sit down and think, but I think this is a good call, as is Revenge of the Cybermen, because of course Bryant doesn't only use people he's worked with as a director before. He also, early in his career, he works with people he's worked with as a production assistant before, because he knows probably who's been a good actor, who can do the job, who's easy to handle, who he therefore wants to make his job as a young fledgling director easy, which is probably why he's surrounded himself with a lot of his favourite actors here. And I know from speaking to Michael that Maurice Perry was one of his very, very favourite actors and did some of his favourite work for him. He loved Maurice's work. But that's a good. I enjoyed. Thanks for that. This Nevs and the comment I've got coming up from Jasper now were not on the. So this is that we have been blessed by the fact that my holiday was ruined by the fact I'd got a broken podcast hanging over me. Nevs and this next comment from Jasper weren't. You wouldn't have got them in the original commentary for Colony in Space episode 3, because I recorded it before these comments appeared on Patreon. So we do, out of something evil must come something good. So out of Audacity mucking up for me, we now have Jasper, who says, "Hi Toby, I've been a bit behind on the podcast lately, so this is the first time I've listened to Happy Time and Times and Places in ages. I've had so much fun. Best commute in weeks. It has been a few months since I watched this one. I'm on a reboss operation this week. Loving the intergalactic conmen, hurrah. But good taste, Jasper. But my main memory is that I wasn't that interested in the concept when I came to it. But then, well, Malcolm Hulke. Between his character work and his twists and his big lizards, I consistently loved his writing all through the Pertwee era. As for Pertwee, it's funny that you mention his tetchiness and his masculinity, and the era maybe being a bit too 70s man at times, because that's exactly what I was worried about when I started season 7. And I swear to God, this is not just an excuse to mention it, but that is genuinely one of the things I got from the Ambassadors of Death. Jasper is a big, unapologetic fan, quite rightly, of the Ambassadors of Death, by the way. I could see his tetchiness through a new angle. I'm stuck on Earth with these stupid idiot humans, and I don't want to get too close to them anyway, because that's just going to get them into trouble. However, if one of them actually works with me and is sensible, then I might just find his space controller shtick endearing rather than annoying. And remember that I love these precious idiot humans, even if they drive me mad. Oh, look, it's Liz. I actually really care about her, and I'm in a slightly better place to show it now. The bit about the female villains, though, wow, that is something I knew was true but did not know until today. Too much for the dads, ha ha ha. I was walking along the street laughing like an idiot because that is hilarious. Looking forward to listening to the rest of the episodes. Jasper, always a pleasure to hear from you, Jasper. I hope you're very well. And as I say, if that means hearing from Jasper and Nev means it's worth doing this all over again. And I've no idea what I said on the first one. So let's get ready to play Colony in Space. Episode 3, second time in a week for me, in 3, 2, 1. And so, of course, I've now got to try to put out of my mind what I did on the last one, which, of course, I'm now, in my head, is the best ever episode of Happy Times and Places ever. Why? Simply because I cannot access it. So it's missing episodes theory, isn't it? If it's missing, it's bound to be the best ever. But I'll just have to. I do seem to recall being quite happy with it. But that's the nature, isn't it? It's always that which we cannot access. I didn't mention. At the end of episode 2, by the way, how I'm always slightly bothered when I rewatch this, how people's muddy boots aren't, they you saw Morgan come in from outside, tread on the mud, treading in the mud, and then in the studio the mud has not carried on. I do like the attention to detail of the scratches that you can see in that opening shot of Tony Cornter. And I rather like the incongruous image of the claws on the IMC robot. Um, but this does slightly. We talked about small planet syndrome in the comments. This does slightly smack of small scene. You know, that people are only existing within the drama that we can see. Because why has Morgan run out and then run away? He's still got the advantage, I would say, even if he hung out and waited for the Doctor to exit. But it's like he's run off so the Doctor can take care of what the Doctor needs to get to. So then that world sort of stops. Doctor Who very rarely does that, but TV dramas can do it where as soon as somebody leaves a scene, that's kind of it. They then have no influence until in this case, he's back with the IMC man. It doesn't quite translate that the Doctor kicking the gun out of his hand would make him, I think, disappear. But here we have. I've been thinking a lot about John Ringham lately because I'm doing, for Too Much Information, I'm doing the Aztecs, in which he is so different as Tlatoxel. He was very well known to me when I was growing up as Penny's dad in Just Good Friends, but he's a lovely, lovely actor, and he's perfect for Ash, I think. I do like the IMC costumes. I think they're very good, and this they like this shot, don't they, of the back of the heads of the piloting. But Maurice Perry's hair, it's a terrible cut. It's a terrible brushing it forward like that. And I can imagine the sort of brushes that they had in those days. I've still got my granddad's shaving kit actually that has an old-fashioned brush that's sort of flat thing that you brush down, and it sort of sticks your hair down. I don't even own a hairbrush. I don't even own hair. It's probably just hair envy. Where Maurice Perry's egregiousness in her suitedness department is, I'm incapable of producing nothing. Here's Pat Gorman. Pat Gorman alert. I remember this shot always being very good for if I wanted a screen grab of Bernard. And in fact, there was one of those because I think he'd gathered a few, or he'd been given a few. Maybe a fan had let him have a few, but because there was one in a frame at his after his funeral. The lights have gone off, of course, because they've got problems with their electricity, so that gives this a nice gloominess. And the characterizations here are very good. The characters drive a lot of this story, and that's Malcolm Hulke's great skill. Because Winton is an odd character in the sense that he is on the side of the angels, but he is kind of responsible for a lot of the crap that happens because he's the very definition of hot-headed. But he's obviously meant to be the sort of young Juve lead hero type. I love the Maurice Perry's ability to not ululate. He has a deliberately sort of flat delivery, which conveys the emotion that he needs to convey without him seemingly going for histrionics. I think he's a brilliant actor. He's one of those great understated actors, Maurice Perry. He has a wonderful, and he's because as I knew him a little bit later in life, he was quite sort of cantankerous and cheeky. And had a much higher register. His voice had gone up an octave or two in very old age. Did I say I'm now worrying. I can't remember what I said on episode 2 and on the episode 3, the original episode 3. But it's worth it that Morris was an old friend of Bernard Kay's, and they lived in close proximity to each other, and they're both in, because Morris, of course, is in the Survivors episode about a mad dog, about somebody who gets bitten and gets rabies, and that's Morris, and he's being hunted by Bernard Kay. So Morris is the goodie and Bernard is the baddie, and Bernard filmed that episode just after the death of his wife Patsy, and it was a very, very difficult time for him. But when I stopped Morris on the way to Bernard's funeral, apologies if I've said this before. This happens sometimes when I'm emceeing. When you MC the Comedy Store, the problem is you go on and you do the early show, but you're on 4 or 5 times because you have to introduce the show and then you go on in between each act, and then you do the midnight show. And you do it all over again. So by the time you're doing the second half of the midnight show, you can't remember if the joke you're about to say you said at the 7 o'clock show or at this show. And I have once actually done a joke I'd already done in a show, and the audience were furious. I think they think you just make it up every time. And the fact that they got that peek behind the curtain and went, what, that thing he said before, he hadn't just thought of that. And I really had to work to get the back, having had a really good evening, but it was like I'd betrayed them. So I apologise if I'm betraying you now. But it is a good story that Morris said of Bernard. Was he only 86? Morris was 89, I think, at this point, and I said yes, and he cracked into a very smile of victory. Anyway, so here we have. I like the fact that the robot they could have used this as a piece of merchandise. I like the fact that the robot there is armless. Because it means he could have, he has replaceable appendages. I like that. The robot, we don't talk about the robot much. It was very much the headline news of Colony in Space when I was a time tot. But this is Joe and Winton kind of causing a little bit of trouble. But I do like the fact that Joe has given Winton the idea. She's lovely 70s crash zoom into the character who's furthest back in the shot. That's very good. But there is something quite dramatically sort of engaging in a frustrating way, but a good frustrating way, in that our heroes kind of make trouble for themselves, because so long as IMC have the veneer that what they're doing is acceptable behaviour, they do have a sort of, it is advantageous to them, but also they can do this behind the scenes sort of negotiation stuff, which means they can show their true colours. But they were attempting to rob the spaceship. Yes, they were attempting to rob the spaceship to show something bad, but it's played into their hands. And this is the frustration of when the people on your side, and this happens with political discourse. Indeed, this very day, you see people who have your point of view do something stupid or say something stupid. You're not helping anybody, and that's exactly what Joe and Winton have done here. I love the way that Morris holds John Pertwee's gaze there. He's really menacing and really subtle. And Pertwee's great. Pertwee glowers people. There is this whole argument that Pertwee's, the word has been used. Pertwee's a bit of a prick. He is very testy, isn't he? But we like that. Again, we like that when he's testy with people we know are bad. We only don't like it when he behaves like that towards people that we like. Your enemy's enemy is my friend and all of that. But the Doctor is the lead character, and it's funny. Did I ever see him as when I was younger? I mean, he is sort of impatient, isn't he? But he kind of gets away with it because you don't want him to be. Because otherwise he'd be. I mean, look at his hair, look at his costume. Otherwise he'd be sort of very. I mean, he is quite camp. Is he camp? I don't know. It's difficult with camp because I was going to say because I'm not a camp person. I'm surely sometimes I can sometimes teeter on the brink of campness myself. But of course, but because of the way that he looks, he needs to kind of have some bolshiness to go with it. Otherwise, it would be he'd be flouncing around the universe. This is the sort of stuff I used to sort of rather like as a kid. They've been very clever. They've got the oil from the bomb, and then they use it to get the thing off. That's all quite fun. That's all engaging adventure stuff. And I like this set. I like the fact that it's the old building has the has that chink of light, because it means that the rest of this set can afford to be quite dark, but you get the light source coming in, although it is lit from above. But I think they cheat it rather nicely, which means it's a good visual. And we've got a lovely, lovely bomb, which is always very exciting. So Pat Gorman here. I do like these IMC costumes. The black and the red is good, and they're nicely cut. But Pat Gorman plays lots of different parts in this story. He's Primitive and Voice in episodes 1 and 2. He's this IMC man. I think he's called Long in this episode. He plays a colonist next week, I think. And this is, you really think he's killed Winton there. So as security guard Alan, this is Stanley McGee, who has sadly just died. Stanley McGee gives great guard for Michael E. Bryant, because he's also one of the guards in the Sea Devils. He's the one that warns Trenchard just as the Sea Devils are attacking the prison. He does good mustachioed guard, and he was living in Australia. And I've just Facebook has just suggested me as a friend. I love that when he says, "When do you want him brought back alive?" And Captain Dent gives him the look as if to say, "Well," and because Morris's acting is so good, Captain Dent gives him the look as if to say, "What do you think?" But without doing anything. Yes, Stanley McGee sadly just passed away in Australia, and Facebook suggested him to me as a friend. I think because obviously I've been typing messages to my friend Ben Jolly, with whom I chat about the death of Doctor Who actors, and I clicked it, and his sort of memorial service was there, and seeing friends of his being very upset, and he seems to have been a great character. And I could have Zoomed him, couldn't I? I could have contacted him on Facebook and said, "Hello, Stanley, would you like to do an interview about Doctor Who?" And he seems like to have been a very engaged member of this community and had a really interesting life from Ireland to England to Australia. But now, sadly, no, he's no longer with us. And he was there hiding in plain sight. I think I knew he was there, but again, you don't. I always think with Winton's costume, it's sort of exposing a bit of his back, but it's not. It's the colour of it, but it looks terribly drafty. Anyway, I really like this moment because Winton is escaping, and I'm presuming you're not supposed to be 100% sure who that is. I mean, it's not 100% clear here. Because I mean, yes, I know he's got a moustache and he's by Caldwell's tent, but you don't get a close up, I think, deliberately to sort of tease you. So I think if you're a kid watching, you got I think that's the nice one, but it at least teases you just a little bit, so that you're actually with these guys going, "Oh, are they gonna catch up with him?" And it helps to sell it that from their point of view, their quarry, and Nicholas Pennell has admirably thrown himself about in the mud. But yeah, it's a lovely moment because we kind of hope that Caldwell, even though he's still in the clutches of IMC and is still doing his job, still has enough residual kindness and decency to do the right thing, and he's placed to do throughout the story. He never, he's not 100% of a turncoat. He's got divided loyalties. But I think that's a lovely moment because it's a great character beat for him. It's a great dramatic part of the story. It looks like Winton's, for it, and then you have this nice little twisty moment where he's got to the end of the line. Oh, and look, there's blood. There's blood on Caldwell's hand there. It's not very often you see your actual blood in Doctor Who, so that's quite good and realistic. I like this scene when I did. When I was doing the end of year tribute, I think it was the first one I did. Was it the first proper one I did? And I used this clip to illustrate Bernard, who of course was in 4 Doctor Who's of this, which this is the last. And yeah, Nicholas Pennell, the other, who's gets top billing in episode 1 until he is usurped, quite rightly, by Bernard. And this is. This is an illustration in the book where Caldwell says, this is Duralinium. That's one of the illustrations in the book. Although Caldwell doesn't have a moustache in the book, they reduce the moustache. I love the way he says, "Get your people off this planet." There's real goodness there. He's resigned, but he's decent, and he's a cog in the machine. Whereas Winton comes out and he's he's sort of justified in what he's doing, and we've given him this sort of impetuous character, and you need people who are that sort of determined and brave in order to survive as a vulnerable colony. You also need somebody who is decent and kind and a negotiator like Ash. But of course, the two characters are the two characteristics are both very different and rub each other up the wrong way. And there's what's good about this is there's a truth to, well, there's an absolute truth to the characterizations, but there's a validity to both of their approaches. And you think, well, the colony probably needs both sets of those people. Dr. John Pertwee and Bernard Kay, and I like all this this stuff that we have with working out bonuses and how much do you do for money. He's just trying to get on with his job. Do we get involved? Do we raise our head above the parapet? These are age-old stories, and we see them even now. How much does one commit? And as one gets older, sort of think, do I just keep my head down and try and live an easy life? And sometimes people who stick their head above the parapet could be really annoying and self-righteous. So it's a hard negotiation, and I think we imagine being all of the different variations of that in order to work out what sort of person we are. And I think Bernard manages to be somebody who can't make up his mind, but who isn't, irritatingly indecisive. That's a thing that tapes are much noisier in the old days, because that tape wouldn't have made that noise in real life. So there is an adjudicator arriving, which brings us to another element of the plot. Pat Gorman's brushed his hair forward as well, and Cornter has. Everybody brushes their hair forward in IMCville. My IMCV, is that what they call it, do you think? I'm proffering my IMCV. See, he's showing a little bit of backbone and steel, which I like, but he still has that element of uncertainty. It's a very multi-layered performance, and I really like it. And I love the way that Dent doesn't lose his temper. He just does it. Okay, he doesn't seethe or anything like that. He's working out what to do next. And I love this. You've just committed professional suicide. I remember thinking that was so grown up as a kid. And I remember reading it in one of the Doctor Who magazine, Doctor Who archives. And I think it doesn't take long to get to the cliffhanger. Or does he get speared in the chest? I think he does here. Maybe you don't see it. He's killed up. Yeah, spear in the chest. That's you got quite a lot of that in drama when I was growing up as a kid. You don't get so many spears in the chests these days. But I love the profession. And I'm sure in the Doctor Who archive, the cliffhanger comes not long after when Captain Dent, tells Caldwell he's just committed professional suicide. That seems so grown up to me. I think I've mentioned already. It could have been in the Lost episode. I love the stuff about Caldwell being in debt. I like the real world sort of creeping in a little bit, the mundane things that make us. I've reconsidered my view of Lupton actually, since I was rather rude about the fact that he was such an ordinary. His motivations were so sort of prosaic and everyman, if you like, that actually there's something very real about that. We're often motivated by the stupid, silly little things, and great evil and can be done for petty little resentments. And I know I fight a constant battle, I think, to try and not let resentments and something that happened 15 years ago that I'm the only person that remembers sort of spoil my. That's quite her smile there is quite sort of kids drama, isn't it? But I quite like it, where she's quite excited to see two men just get knocked out, and her two friends go in to raid the ship that is full of armed men who could machine gun them to death. But yeah, I remember being, thinking the idea of Caldwell committing professional suicide being such a grown-up sort of thing, and I sort of fantasized about that actually being the cliffhanger of things I fantasized about. And I think in my head, I like to, and I sometimes would think about, reading out the Target books, or reading, or making tapes of the archives or whatever. And I would have cheated, and I would have made that the cliffhanger, as if that's somehow this really bold thing for Doctor Who to be that a supporting character, albeit one played by an actor I really liked, committing professional suicide would be something of a cliffhanger. But that's not un-Malcolm Hulkey, actually, because his original cliffhanger for Frontier in Space episode 5, wasn't it, was General Williams sort of saying, "And I will come with you," or whatever. Sometimes a character moment, and there are quite a few character moment cliffhangers in Enemy of the World, which I know is not a Malcolm Hulke story, but it sort of feels like it is, kinda. And I sometimes quite like those cliffhangers in theory better than in practice, because you'd be like, that's naff, I want somebody being threatened by a monster or something. But I do like the idea that the Doctor Who might occasionally try to do something like that. But like a lot of things that I imagine, imagining them is probably more fun than actually experiencing them. I mean, probably count quite a few experiences like that. But now, and I find one frustration I have with Malcolm Hulke is that he's very good at making sort of individual lives count, and making characters very important, even, and making small characters the stars of their own movie, as it were, which of course we all are. But then he dispenses with extras very easily, and that's a sort of very television thing to sort of have. So these good colonists, who are essentially farmers, are then prepared to just go onto the IMC ship and gun people down. But I suppose I don't know what carving out a new frontier is like, and maybe you have to, probably, death is a much more everyday occurrence when you're a colonist trying to set up your own world, because life gets cheaper in the great unknown. I remember, and the reason I wanted the professional suicide cliffhanger and not this one, because I remember being quite disappointed. It's not so good when it's in bad quality either. And I also think, I think it perhaps needs, you hear the door shutting, but I think perhaps if the lighting had cast a shadow as the door shut, a shadow would blot out Joe's face. I think that would be slightly more exciting of a full stop. But actually, Hulk has very cleverly set it up by going, nobody that's gone into those caves has ever come back out again. So, we know that the place that she's going, once that door shuts, is going to be very, very hard for her to get out of. So he is IMC Man Long. So I suppose that's okay. But yeah, I chalk that up as one of the cliffhangers that I wasn't wild about when I was younger, but I think is rather fun now. I still quite like my professional suicide cliffhanger. I don't know why. I think it's just very grown-up wording, isn't it? So that is my my second attempt to commentary for episode 3. So of course I'm not going to cheat. I am going to choose the thing that I chose last time, but I suppose I need to go through the other things that I might have chosen, which I can't remember now, because it was a pretty resounding decision in the end to go for. I like the bit where Winton looks like he's come to the end and he collapses defeated. The IMC men are chasing after him. He's run into another IMC man, and you hear the shots, and he's been killed. But if you're a kid watching, you go, no, I think I'm ahead of this. I think that's the nice one. And we've seen him in long shot, and you kind of know he is. And of course, he's doing what Caldwell should be doing. But nonetheless, they don't show it because they do want it to seem slightly mysterious. So that's good work being done to just make what could have been a very straightforward moment just have a little bit of what ifs and buts about it. And it's a lovely character beat for the character of Caldwell, who I think is a great character, very well played. And it shows an important a moment in the development of what's happening between the colonists and the miners. And I love what Caldwell stands for. Do we look after our own interests, or do we do something brave? And there he takes the initiative and does something brave, at great personal risk to help somebody he doesn't really know. And I like the fact that the characters are quite layered, because Winton is a bit of an arse in places, but Nicholas, but they're all likable enough actors. This is what I love about actors from this time. They all have qualities where, even though they do things that are slightly annoying or slightly frustrating, there's an integrity about them, which means you kind of accept them on their own terms. And it's layered, and it's clever, and it's very well done. So my moment that I chose was that moment between Winton and Caldwell in long shot, where you think Winton is going to get killed, unless you're a very perceptive child who's then feeling very pleased with himself, and actually he does not. So that was my favourite moment. I can't remember now the other ones that I chose, but what I'm going to do is because I'd done most of this before, but I didn't want to cheat, and I didn't want to sort of marry up me post-holiday and then suddenly 8 minutes into the episode you're suddenly hearing from me pre-holiday, and I try and pretend they were both from the same moment. So here's another advert for Patreon, and I need to advertise my Patreon. It's how I fund doing these podcasts. So on Patreon I'm going to put at some point the abandoned, the lost, the half-missing episode of Happy Times and Places that has my original commentary on Colony in Space, and let's see how much I repeat or don't. But anyway, Colony episode 3, what has my guest, well, I know, but what has my guest Simon chosen? Has he chosen that bit where Caldwell saves Winton? Because that's my favourite bit. It speaks very much of what Malcolm Hulke does, and this has often got a reputation for being a series of machine gun fights here and there is a bit of repetition of that sort of stuff, but I think the Norton subplot gives another dimension to that. The arguments between the colonists themselves, namely Ash and Winton, make it a bit more three-dimensional. The whole setup of IMC, there are layers within the goodies versus baddies. But anyway, what has Simon chosen as his thing for episode 3?
My favourite thing about episode 3 of Colony in Space is the writing of Malcolm Hulke. He's got so many different characters in this story, and each and every one of them is clearly well drawn, and you quickly know who they are and how they fit in, both on the IMC side and on the colonist side. It would be very easy for some of these characters to be sidelined, but they aren't. And so the collective group of characters in Colony is a fascinating one. It's great dialogue all the time, particularly for the Doctor, and Winton has some cracking one-liners. So, since writers often get left behind, and he wrote so many great stories, including my absolute favourite, The Sea Devils, Malcolm Hulke is my favourite thing about episode 3.
Oh, well, that's a great call. Malcolm Hulke is one of the great Doctor Who writers. As I say, I found his books hard to get into because I read them when I was too young. But then when I visited them again when I was a bit older, they were the more interesting ones, and a lot of the bits that were most memorable about them were not in the TV versions. And I wonder why, because they're not things that couldn't have fitted into the TV versions. Maybe they were deemed to be, maybe he just came up with them after the event, or maybe they were thought to be too thoughtful and character based when a bit of action would do. But I can't see any of his stories not benefiting from some of the things he comes up with after the event. So I would always recommend reading a Hulke book if you only know the TV version. And of course, that there is something about watching the TV version having come from the book, which is initially disappointing. But now, as I'm a bit older and the book's receded my memory a bit, it means that I'm now getting used to the TV versions on their own merits rather than because of how they differ from the books. And of course, seeing things that they have that are unique to the TV versions that are fascinating and interesting. And this story has so many layers. it's not just colonists and miners. You have that whole thing about the indigenous population of the planet, who we're going to get to know in later episodes, and the adjudicator is on his way. So we've got something going on there. So there's plenty of layering on, and then the individual scenes have lovely, lovely character moments. It means there is a lot of talk, but I don't mind the talk. But there's still plenty of action too, back and forths from the spaceship, and yes, quite repetitive gun battles, but. It's still maintaining my interest, and I think I don't know. I just think the fact that it's the colour scheme and the moustaches that have done for poor old Colony in Space, and I suppose the rest of the season is more colourful and probably more fast moving. But I enjoy this, and I think Malcolm Hulke is a very, very good choice. Even if you could have. Well, look, I'm not gonna bang on too much, because I might be repeating myself from episode 2. I might be trying to make up for what I imagined to be the brilliance of the original take of this. That probably wasn't brilliant. Story was probably just fine, but I'm sure there were some interesting moments or good jokes that I did then that I've failed to recapture now, and I will regret that. It's another of the accumulative life I've discovered is just an accumulation of regrets. That's what happens. That's why you start forgetting things, because you've got too many things pecking your head. This big queue of things. Because I still remember ones that I'm sad about. I was sad about when I was 7, but I've had another 40 odd years to add a whole mountain more. But anyway, let's not get into that. But I cannot make this too much of a confessional. I do wonder as well. I think I spent the first 3 minutes of this one apologising for something you needn't have even known about and obsessing about it. Should I just do the Doctor Who stuff? I'm not going to ask you if I should just do the Doctor Who stuff, because if you say yes, when I clearly haven't in loads, I will then they will be added to my lists of things I regret and am sad about, and I will fixate upon those, and I'll also be disappointed, because I know what the answer I want is. No, everything you say is brilliant, and you just carry on. But so I don't need to ask, because I just assume I don't assume you think that. I assume the worst, but people do listen, and people are nice. So just talk about Doctor Who, Toby. Just talk. It's okay. Doctor Who, hurrah! And to do anything, yes, I'm just going to talk about Doctor Who, I promise. To do otherwise, and here's a cliffhanger we're going to love, to do otherwise would be professional suicide. Thanks so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydock, and my special guest, Simon Curtis. I'm grateful to Simon and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Michael Harvey, Dave Hoskin, Richie Howarth, Robert Jewell, Paul Jones, Andrew Jordan, Andrew Jolly, Christopher Joyce, Jess Jerkovic, Rick King Byatt, Andy Kitching, Ashley Knight, Clive Lewis, James Lark, Lisa and Andrew, Gavin McLean, Steve Manfred, David Matthewman, Jason Mayo, Ross McPhillips, Stuart Mitchell, Nathan Moore, Ian Morgan, Matthew Newton, Graham Knott, Dave Owen, Adam Parkin, Ken Patterson, Melvin Pena, Jonathan Potter, Kevin Parker, Scott Pride, Dylan Rees, John Rivers, Jim Sangster, and Keith Say. The music is by Dave Gates and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like your name listed on the credits, that is one of the bonuses that you get for being a patron by going to patreon.com/Toby Haydock. There you get usually 3 releases a week. Every release is available to even the lowest tier, the lowest paying tier, which is £3 per month. And so for £3 you usually get a good 12 or so bits bobs. Not 12 podcasts, but sometimes you get bits from behind the scenes of my DVD and Blu-ray work. You get interviews from my archive. You get bits of my stand-up comedy. You get a monthly exclusive AMAs, and there's also an exclusive podcast that's an accompaniment to Too Much Information called Far Too Much Information. And also all of these podcasts are far further ahead in the release schedule on Patreon than they are elsewhere. There is a free level of entry to the Patreon, which is something they have added. I haven't quite got my head around that yet. I have bunged a few things there because I don't want the people there to not be getting anything. But I haven't quite worked out, because obviously the reason I have the Patreon is so that people can support these things in a way that makes it financially viable for me to do so. So I don't want to be giving stuff away, but that also doesn't mean I don't appreciate the people who are lending their support by hanging around. So I've got to work out what to do with the free guys. So please bear with me. Your patience is appreciated. You can also support these financially without a monthly commitment by going to kofi.com/Toby Haydoke and just making a donation whenever you like. But you can support these in other ways, notably by liking, by subscribing, by going to my YouTube channel and clicking on the releases there, and anywhere that you find these, giving them 5 stars and a few lines of review. That really, really helps, and I'm grateful. You can follow me on social media, pretty much everywhere. I'm on, what am I on? I'm on Twitter at Toby Haydoke and at Haydoke Podcasts, to show that I'm a bit of a Caldwell in that I've a foot in the Twitter camp, but I'm also there helping out the Blu-ray people. I mean, I really am. I'm taking my like for Bernard Kay a little far, aren't I? So I'm in the blue sky as well. But I'm telling them that Twitter is rich with duralumium. I'm also on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. I have an Instagram and the YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe to that. That would really help. And click on the videos of these, even if there's only a holding graphic. It's just the audio. But my son told me that these should be available on YouTube, because that's how some people consume their podcasts. And of course, I get pretty good listenership on the Apples and the iTunes and the Podbeans and the Spotifys. YouTube, I look like I've got no friends whatsoever, especially as they release these twice, and I'm not quite worked out how. I've set it up to be automatic and it does it twice. So not only do I only get double figures watching it, I get double figures watching it twice. And it's about equal of both as well, so I can't delete one or I lose half of my... Oh dear, what am I doing? Why am I sharing this with you? You don't need to know this. You're just here for the artifacts and the memories. But anyway, this is the plug-in bit. Right, go away. But thank you. Follow me on social media. Do the nice stuff. Thanks. Right. I've been on holiday. I'm now behind because I've been on holiday, especially because just before I went on holiday, it wasn't a fancy holiday, by the way. As I say, it was 5 days in Anglesey on the Welsh coast, and it was largely rainy, but I ate ice cream because I'm allowed, and I did read a bit of a book. This was supposed to be, you were supposed to listen to this. Well, this was supposed to go out automatically, and you'd be listening to this going, oh, he's gone on holiday, and instead you're now listening to it slightly later than planned after I've come back from my holiday. But anyway, there we go. The best laid plans of colonists and IMC. But there we go. So that's my second attempt at that. I suspect it didn't have the luster of the first go, but that can't be helped. Audacity ate my homework, ate my podcast. But it's very frustrating, as I say. I'd managed to save the bit that should have been lost, and then the bit that I had saved and was safe disappeared by damn bad luck. Oh well, there we go. Done now. Episode 4 next, and I'm only going to watch that once.